Hello and welcome back to Enlighten Us, your easy path to learning Arabic grammar. You are joining us for lesson 3. We are looking at the characteristics of the ism. We are looking at the sifat. Now let's have a quick recap. The ism has 4 characteristics, starting with gender. And gender breaks into the feminine, al-mu'annath, and masculine, al-mudhakkar. So an ism can be feminine or could be masculine. It also has a number, so it could be plural, al-jam', jul', al-muthanna, or singular, al-mufrad. Then we have definiteness, so an ism can be proper or common, ma'rifa or nakira. And lastly, an ism has a state, so it can be in rafa', in nasab, or in jar. Let's unpack this using a mithal, an example. And I'm going to start at the end here. So we have mudarrisun, a teacher. Now I'm going to tell you that the gender of this ism is masculine, the number is singular, definiteness, it's common, and lastly, it's in rafa' state. But don't take my word for it. Let's work through together and see how we all can come to this conclusion. Let's start with gender. So start with our word mudarrisun. Now if you remember, we have 2 options. A word can be feminine, mu'annath, or masculine, mudhakkar. What are our options? So we have mudarrisatun, if this word was feminine, and we have mudarrisun. And clearly, mudarrisatun is not a match. Mudarrisun is, so it's masculine. Let's move on. Have a look at number. Now, if you remember, our options are plural, al-jam', jul', al-muthanna, and lastly, al-mufrad, singular. Were it to be jam', it would be mudarrisuna. Were it to be muthanna, المدرسين المدرسان المدرسان and were it to be singular, مدرسون. Now clearly the first 2 are not a match, so it must be mufrad, must be singular. And let's have a look at definiteness. Now of course our options are ma'rifa, proper, or nakira, common. Al-mudarrisu. Note here, al is one way of making an ism proper. Mudarrisun, our option for nakira. Now clearly this one is not a match, therefore mudarrisun, in the absence of any other indicator, and al is nakira. There's something worth pointing out here, that whenever you have al, whenever al is attached to an ism, it is not possible to have tanween. You're never going to find double damma, double kasra, or double fatha. The 2 things don't go together, al and tanween. That's just a point to make. And in keeping with the characteristics, let's move on to state. So we have mudarrisun, and our options are jar, nasab, and rafa'. The option for jar is mudarrisin. The option for nasab is mudarrisan, and the option for rafa' mudarrisun. Now again, clearly the first 2 are not a match, so therefore the state of mudarrisun must be rafa'. But what does all of this mean? Well, let's bring it together into this chart. We have 2 charts actually, so we have mudarrisun, mudarrisan, mudarrisin, mudarrisani, mudarrisaini, mudarrisaini, mudarrisuna, mudarrisina, mudarrisina. Now this chart on the right hand side is all the versions of the ism that are mudhakkar, that are masculine. On this side, mudarrisatun, mudarrisatan, mudarrisatin, mudarrisatani, mudarrisataini, mudarrisataini, mudarrisatun, mudarrisatin, mudarrisatin. These are all the versions of the ism that are feminine. The first column, so the first column on this chart and the first column here, these are the singular, the mufrad version of the ism. And as I'm sure you can guess, the second column is the muthanna. And the third column, that is the jam, that's the plural. The first rows, so the first row on this table and the first row on this table, that is your rafa version of the word. The second row, that is your nasab version, and the final row, that is your jar version. Now, in the absence of L or any other indicator, and we'll look at the other indicators of properness later, all of these words are common. So we have come to the end of the session. What I'm going to tell you to do is to learn these words. Every single one of them, not just so that you learn the various versions of mudarrisun, but because this is actually a template that can be applied to other words. So for instance, you could have mudarrisun, you could apply this table to muslimun or muallimun, and equally you could use these endings to change the original word into the various versions. So if we move on, now if I was to ask you, for instance, to provide me with the version of mudarrisun that is masculine, jul, common and nasab, well, we know that this is the table for masculine. We know that the second column is for the jul. We know that all of these words are common, and we know that the middle row is the nasab. So we would say mudarrisaini is the word, the proper word to use, or the correct word rather to use. If I was to ask you, for instance, for the feminine jul, common, nasab, you would know it's this one. Mudarrisataini is the correct word to use. So it's definitely worth learning these two charts, and we'll do much more practice with them. Thank you for joining us in today's lesson. Do check out the description box for additional resources, and of course don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and hit that notification bell. See you in the next one, inshallah.